This is lab one of a two-lab project where we will be simulating a college registrar system. The registrar system will have different courses and different sections of the courses. Students will be able to enroll in these sections and then later on ultimately produce a transcript. And in Microsoft Access, we have a similar layout that we have with other Microsoft Office products. So we have on top a series of tabs, and these tabs are familiar to you by now, where we have a File tab where we have operations that have to do with the properties of the file and printing and opening and closing files. And we have a Home tab where we have many of our most commonly used features. As you click on the tab, they may expand. You can pin this tab open so it stays open all the time, but in my case I'm going to collapse it so it only opens up when I use it, and that way it gives me more real estate to work. We have tabs for creating tables or different entities, and we'll explore these as we move along. On the left hand we have a navigation section, and a navigation section allows us to open different objects that we have. When I click on this little up arrow, I can see different kind of objects. I only have tables at this point in time, but later on we will have forms and reports also that you will be able to see listed in here. So what we have here is a graphical representation of the different tables that our registrar system has, and we can see connection lines between these tables that represent the type of relationships that exist between the different tables. This is the heart of our relational databases, where we create tables for different types of entities, and then these tables have attributes specific to those entities, and then the tables are related to each other using keys. Inside the tables we have listed the different fields for the particular table. It has fields with their names, and in between the fields we see the relationships between the tables. On the left we have a series of tables, so let's explore a few to see what our homework looks like today. On the left hand side we see the subjects table right here. And I'm going to double click on subjects, and when I open it I see that the subject table is open over here, and on the subjects I see a series of subjects with a code. The code on the subject represents the unique identifier for the subject's records. As you know by now, by referring to the chapter associated with this lab, that each one of the tables requires that we have a unique identifier. Next to it we have a description, and the description is an architecture and interior design. We have different ones for our particular class as CTA, so computer technology, and we have computer information systems. And we have other things also like cybersecurity and so on. The way that we're looking at this table right now is referred to as data view, because what we're seeing is data. But there's another view of the table, and let's look at it right now. We're going to look at it by clicking on the Home tab, and on the left side you see the View group, and under the View group, if I expand it, I have two views, which is a data base or the data sheet view. This is what we're looking at right now, and the design view. So when I click on the design view, I get a different view of the table. And here I can see the two fields that I have, a subject code and a subject description. And next to it, we see the data types associated with those codes. And the bottom of the area we'll talk about, we can change different attributes of a table. Let's go back to the datasheet view. And this is the datasheet view. We return here. So I'm going to close the subject, and I'm going to close the relationship tab that I had before. As we go on, move on to our lab today, we will learn more deeply about the different features of Access and how the database works. I'm going to start our lab by opening up a fresh copy of Microsoft Access. And as we open up Access, we can see a typical Office start screen where we have a choice of different templates. You can scroll down and find different ones or search for a particular template. On today's lab, what we're going to start with is a blank database. For that, I'm going to click on this icon for a blank database. I'm going to create the blank database. So we're going to start by creating our first table for class subjects. By default, in a new database, Access is going to provide you with a blank table. And here we have a blank table right here. You can see the name of the table is Table 1, and it already has created an ID field. And we have a column that continually changes where we can create new fields. I'm going to flesh out the subject table. I am going to click on the expand arrow next to the click to add heading. When I create a new field, I click the drop down arrow, and then I have a choice of different data types that we can use. The first field that I'm going to create is going to be the subject code field. I'm going to make this a short text. And in the short text, I have a field name over here. Now highlighted, it's called field 1. And I am going to rename this field subject code. And when you notice that I typed subject code, there is a general agreement on styles on how do we rename fields. I have named the subject code field using what's called camelback notations, where I capitalize the first letter of each one of the words subject code. Notice that there's no spacing between the two words. That's a convention also. You can put spacing, but it makes things a little bit more complicated later on. Now I have two fields. I have a field ID and a subject code. I'm going to enter another field that is also going to be a short text field, and this one I'm going to name subject description. I'm going to expand the size of the column so you have a better view. We have now three fields: the field ID, subject code, and subject description. Now I'm ready to start entering some data. My first record, I am going to give it a code of ANT. I press tab, and the subject description for this is going to be anthropology. And the second record is going to be sociology. Let's look at a different view of the table. This is the data sheet view because we can see the data. We're going to change right now to the design view. Click on the home key, and then I'm going to change to the design view. When I do that, it's going to ask me for a table name, and this is a good time to give this table a name, and the name of this table is going to be subjects. If we look now at the navigation key, before where it said table 1, now it reads subjects. And here are our two fields, subject code and subject description, and we have a first field called subject ID. Notice that the field type or the data type for the subject ID is going to be auto number. Subject code and subject description is going to be short text. That's what we selected when we created these two fields. Access by default will always create on a new table, will create an auto number field, which is the unique identifier. You can see that it is a unique identifier because right next to it, it has the little key symbol right here. What we want to do though, we want our subject code, remember we created two subject codes, ANT and SOC, we want those to be the primary key. To do that, I'm going to change first, I'm going to highlight subject code. This is the subject code field, and I'm going to make subject code the primary key. To do that, I can right click on the subject code, and I can just make it the primary key. Now you can see that primary key has changed to subject code. ID no longer has the primary key symbol next to it. Now I'm going to delete the ID code. I don't need that. So to do that, I highlight the field, I right click and delete that whole row or that whole field. Access is going to give me a warning on that, and I'm going to say yes, I want to delete it. And that's all we need right now. We have changed the primary key of this table. So here's the Navigation, I'm going to click over on navigation, and when I double click on subjects, here's the table open. Notice that the field ID is now gone, and we have the subject code, subject description, and other fields. Code. Here is the subject table as we originally created with just two fields. What we're going to do is add more records to this table, but we're not going to type it in. What we're going to do is import them from Excel. To do that, let me first close the table. I'm going to go to external data, new data sources. I'm going to import table from an existing file, and it's going to be an Excel file. And I'm going to browse for that file, and here's the file. I'm going to click open, and then the next choice that I have is where do I want to import it to, and I want to select this value. I'm going to append it to an existing table. The table that I want to append to is a table subjects that we've been working on. So I'm going to click on OK. When you do that, I want you to notice here in this box that we have two choices because the work file or the Excel file has two different worksheets. We have a worksheet with the student names and we have another worksheet with the subjects. And that's what we're interested at this particular point in the lab. We're going to import subjects. So I have selected the subject table. I'm going to import, or I'm going to click next. I'm going to click next again, and here's a verification. I'm going to finish the work. And the last thing that Access wants to know is, do I want to save the import steps? I don't want to. I'm going to leave this checkbox empty, and I'm going to close this wizard. If I open up the table, you're going to see the new values that we've imported. We saved ourselves quite a bit of typing by importing existing data. The next table that we're going to create is the terms table. We're going to try a different technique. We can create a table, but we can do it in two different views. Before we did it on a table view, but we're going to use the design view. So I showed you that before, the design view. So here we're going to be entering the raw fields and attributes in this table. Now what we're going to enter first is a field name, and the field name that we're going to enter is term ID. The data type that we want is going to be short text. I'm going to enter other fields right now. Now we've entered the three fields, term ID, academic year, and academic term. They all are short text fields. Now I want to make sure that the term ID, and I'm going to select term ID as my primary key, and what I'm going to do is select it, right click, and make this the primary key. Do I want to save the changes? Yes, and the name of the table that I'm going to have for this table is terms. And click on OK. So we have two tables, the table subjects and the table terms. So I'm going to open up terms. It has no data. I'm going to enter some data right now. The term ID is going to be the unique identifier. Academic year represents the year 2017, whatever it may be. And then academic terms, just the fall, spring, summer, winter values right here. Just as a demonstration, I'm going to demonstrate what the unique identifier does and the rules that the database enforces. I'm going to enter a new value, and the new value I'm going to enter right now is 2016 FA. And when I do that and I hit enter, I'm going to get an error. And the error is going to be that I am entering a duplicate key. As you notice, I have done this on purpose. Here's what I've entered just now, 2016 FA, but 2016 FA already existed, and Access does not allow this. I cannot have a duplicate primary key. To get rid of the error, I'm going to click on the escape key, and I'm done. I'm going to create a third table, and the third table is going to be courses. So let me close the terms table, and I'm going to create courses, and I'm going to use the same technique. We're going to create the table in design view, and I'm going to enter the different fields for the new table courses. The field name is going to be course ID, And I want to make sure that this course ID is going to be the primary key, so I'm going to right click on it and make it the primary key. So it's my course ID. The second field I'm going to enter is a subject. So I'm going to navigate from subject. I'm going to look at the bottom, at the second half of the screen, where under the general category, I'm looking for required. And if I move to the right, it says no, and I want to make this a yes, so I'm going to move to the extreme right. I'm going to click on this field, and there's a little drop down arrow, and when I select the drop down arrow, I have choices of yes or no. I want to make sure that I have yes. So now next to required, I have yes. I'm going to enter some additional fields. Now I've entered the fields and the data types of the different fields. I want to point out a couple of interesting things. First one I want to point out is the course description. Now, in the course description, I did not make it a short text, I made it a long text. The long text is to accommodate longer data. See, under course title, I have short text, and under short text, when I look at the bottom part, it has a field size entry of 255. That's how many characters I can put in there. I can certainly make it shorter, but I'm going to leave it the default value of 255. However, when I look at description and I navigate to the bottom, I see no field size restriction. That means that long text allows you to enter as much text as you need. And in the case of a course description, you certainly need a lot of space because a course description on a catalog can take many paragraphs, several paragraphs, or it can be very short. But in order to accommodate for the extremes, we're going to be leaving it open as long text, so anybody can put as much as information you want in the description as needed. Credits is also different because credits, up to now we've been using short and long text, but credit is a number, and we need credits to be a number because later on we will be adding credits together to see how many credits a student has taken. This, we're going to close the table, and when we do it, it doesn't have a name yet. When we do it, we're going to give it the name courses. I have created another table. In this case, this is the table sessions. The session ID field. Notice that it is an auto number. This means that every time a new record is created, Excel is going to create a unique number, and it's going to be sequential. See, I have made the field a primary field. The primary key over here, you can see the symbol. The next field is short, the course, which is going to be the course name, and it's a short text. I have made the field a mandatory required field. Terms, also short text, required field. Session number is a short text and is also a required field. Then I have faculty. The rest of the fields, none of them are going to be required. Faculty is a short text, days is a short text, and then the start date and end date, notice that they're date time fields. So let's move on to the next. I have created now the table enrollments, and let's visit the fields briefly. It has a field name ID, and it's an auto number. One thing I didn't mention in the past is auto number is a numeric field. The difference between auto number and a number field is, although they're both numeric, auto number is created automatically by Access, and it's used primarily for creating unique identifiers. Then we have a session ID, which is a short text, and this is going to be a student ID, which is going to be a short text, and we'll see the importance of this later on. Even though we were going to use numeric values, we want them to be treated as a text. Now here's session, and session has a data type of number. We will see that later, that when we create the sessions, that the unique identifier for sessions is going to be a numeric value. Because we're going to be relating tables, when we relate tables, we want to make sure that when we do create the relationship must be done with fields that have the same data type. Both the student ID and the sessions have been set to be required. The last table that I'm going to add is the students table. What we're going to be using is an import process similar to what we did before with a slight variation. Once again, we'll go to external data. I'm going to bring a new data source, and it's going to be a file, Excel file, and it's going to be the same file that we used before. I'm going to open it, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to create a new table. Before we had done an append, now we're going to create a new table. We want to make sure to bring in the data from the correct worksheet. So I have selected the student roster worksheet. So we have different student data here with last names, first names, student IDs, and email addresses. It's all in the Excel file. We're going to click on Next. Notice that we have a box here that asks if the table being imported has a heading. Indeed it does. So I'm going to select the first row as it containing the heading. And once again, I want to point out that the spelling here is critical. I want to make sure that the first one has headings. So I'm going to take a quick look at the data, click on Next. When I clicked on next, the next question is, it asked me if what am I going to use as a primary key, and I can let access to it, but I'm not. What I'm going to establish is one of the fields being the primary key, and I choose this button, and it gives me the choice of which field I want to use, and I want the student ID to be the primary key. And what is the name of the table? And I'm going to give it the table name file, and here's my student table. And when I double click it, here's the student names that I have just imported. Before I move on, I want to make one change to this table. I'm going to go to Home and I'm going to change the design view. And when I click on design view, I have the different fields up here: last name, first name, student ID, and here's student ID as my primary key. Notice that the student ID came in as a number. And that is because it indeed is numeric in value, but I want it to be treated as a text. Later on we'll see why. It's because we're going to relate this to another table, and both the relationship keys have to be of the same type. So I want to make sure that the student ID is coming indeed as text, and I'll make it just short text. And I'm going to close the table and save the changes, and I'm done with all the tables. So the next thing I'm going to do is establish relationships with the different tables that I've created. To do that, I click on the database tab and then on the relationships button. And finally, I click on the show table selection, and here are all the tables. I'm going to select all of them. I've selected all of them and created add. Here are all the tables, and I'm going to start creating relationships between the tables. The first relationship I'm going to establish is between courses and subjects. So I'm going to put them side by side. Here's courses over here, and here's subjects. And to create a relationship, what you do is you take the primary key of one table and you connect it to the same key or the key that you want to collect on the second table. On the first table, it would be the primary key. The primary key is on subjects, but subjects appear in the courses table not as a primary key, it is a foreign key. So I'm going to take the primary key subject code from subjects, and I'm going to drop it on top of the subject foreign key on courses. When I do that, I have a dialog box that confirms what I have done. I have subjects, the subject field in subjects to the subject field in courses. And then the last thing I want to do to complete the relationship is make sure that I have enforced the referential integrity. And I'm going to create. And when I do that, there is a linkage line now connecting both tables. And I want you to notice the symbols between the connection lines. You have a number 1 on one side, and you have the infinity symbol on the other, indicating that the relationship between subjects and courses is a one-to-many, meaning that one subject appears in many courses. For example, the subject code for computers may appear in different computer courses. If by any chance you don't see this relationship established here, is because you forgot to click the referential integrity button. To change a relationship between tables, you just click on the line until it becomes thick like you see here. And you right click on the line and you can edit the relationship. Now I'm going to proceed to do other relationships right now. Here I've completed the relationship between the different tables, so let's walk through them briefly. So here we have the students table is related to the enrollments, so we have the student, they're related by the student ID in the students table into the student ID in the enrollments table. It's a one student to many enrollments, and this is indeed your own experience. You as a student can have more than one enrollment. And over here we have the sessions table that is related to the enrollment table. They're related where you have the session ID in the sessions table related to the session field in the enrollments table. So one session can have many enrollments, and by linking the enrollments and students through the sessions and the students through the enrollment, you can easily see, or you can imagine, that one session can have many students. Then we have courses related to sessions where we have a course ID is related to the sessions table because the course ID corresponds to the course on the sessions table. Then you have terms related to the session table where we have different term ID, and it's related to the term field in the sessions table. And lastly, we have subjects where we have various subjects can have more than one course. So a subject, a single subject, can have more than one course, just like a course can have many sessions. A single term can have one term, but that term can have many different sessions. So all the tables are related to each other. When creating the relationships, I want you to position the tables in such a way that the lines don't cross each other, so that you can have a good view logically of how the information is laid out, and it's easier to read the information, or it's easier to read the relationships when they're laid out and the lines are not crossing each other. Now we're going to add some courses to our database. So I'm going to open up the course, my courses table, and I'm going to enter a course. I'm going to enter a course. Okay, I've created my first course as CTA 100, and I've given it a subject code. Now it's important that when you enter this subject code must exist on the subjects table, otherwise you will get an error. And the reason for the error is because we have enforced referential integrity. So you cannot create a course and relate it to a subject that doesn't exist on the subjects table. I've added 2 more courses to my courses table, and I'm going to close it. Now, if I open my subjects table, notice that the subject tables has a series of plus signs next to it. This is because it's indicating that there's a relationship established between the subjects and something else. So I'm going to navigate to the CTA subject. So I clicked under the plus sign next to CTA, and notice that the CTA 100 that I just created before is listed under it. Similarly, under the other courses I created, here is HLS, and there is the Homeland Security course I created, and under LGS, there's a legal office I created, or the legal course I created. Under others, I have not created courses, so they're not going to show up. And here's our courses that we created before. So I'm going to create my first session for this course, and it's going to be for the term of 2016 fall. So I'm going to type 2016 FA, and I'm going to give it a session number, and I'm just going to make this one up, 001, and the faculty, I'm going to enter a professor. Okay, at this point, I move forward and I've entered different sessions for the 3 different courses that we've created. So for CTA 100, we have 2 different sessions. For HLS 111, we have 2 different sessions and 2 different sessions for LGS 112. Always keep in mind that the terms must exist in the term table, otherwise you're going to get errors. Just like when you were creating the courses, the subjects must exist in the subject table. And the reason for this is that Access is enforcing referential integrity, so you cannot make reference to a related field if that field does not exist on the other table. So that wraps up this lab. The next lab, we're going to be completing this project by enrolling students and be able to create reports and forms in order to enter and manage data, and eventually we'll be able to create a course transcript for a student. So catch you on the next lab, and I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.